Welcome. In today's video, we're going to try another stencil pattern. This one's a little larger. It's about a 9-inch square glass panel, bullseye black opaque, and a clear Tecta bullseye underneath. And we're going to use this stencil I grabbed off of Etsy. Give it a try. It's a little thinner than I like using for stencils and frit powders, but we're gonna give it a try and see how it turns out. We're probably gonna just do a white on black here. It's a pretty pattern, kind of a family tree with a heart in the middle. Make a nice gift for someone, so I thought we'd just give it a nice try. I did not have a slumper mold large enough for this size, so I did have this mold that was a little larger. Maybe it's about 10-inch. This is a 9-inch square, but it did have a wood pattern on it. I thought it was kind of neat since it's a tree and you get a wood grain on the back side of it. Thought it'd be interesting look to see how that turned out. So we're gonna give it a try and see what happens. Never done it before, but we'll find out together how that's going to work out. I still need to coat this and prepare this mold. I have not used it before, so this will be our first time for that one also. So first thing we're going to do is put this glass in the kiln, get it fused together, and then we're going to bring it back out and apply the powder, frit powder, onto the pattern and refire it again after that. So first step is to get this fired up, and we'll be back with the product ready to apply the stencil. Now if we have room in the kiln, which I think we will for a couple more, we may put a couple more of these small trinket dish glasses and get those fused up and then try some stencils on those. Okay, our pieces have been fired. We're able to fit the 1 9-inch flat plate, which will end up being slumped into a mold for a dish bowl type piece, and then the 2 3-inch ones. So let's take these out and go for the next step. Okay, we're back from the kiln. We've got our piece, 2 pieces melted together. It's a 9-inch square, and we're going to fuse it into a slumper mold that has a pattern, a wood pattern on it. And what we're going to attempt to do is take this stencil and lay it on here. Try to center it as best we can. And we're going to drop some frit on it. And create this pattern. And then we're going to refire it again into the mold and see how it turns out. Okay, let's get our frit, which is, today we're going to try this opaque white opalescent powder. Get our sifter. I wish I had a larger one. This is the only one I have for now, so we're going to try it with this small one. It should do okay. This may take a little longer than normal, but I'm going to have to get me a larger one. And this is an 80 mesh sifter. And before I start, as you saw from the last video in the kiln, we said we're going to try to fit some more pieces in the kiln. So I had these 2 blanks of white and clear, and we may come up with a pattern to put on those to fire at the same time. So we'll do the tree first, and then we'll come back to those and see what we decide to do for those, if we decide to include those in this firing. So let's take our frit powder. Just going to dip some into it. But before we start applying it, I'm going to just take a few pieces of glass and just lay them around, just to hold this. Since this is a thin, I like using a thicker, more rigid stencil, but since it's raised up a little bit off of the glass, I want to try to get it to lay down a little bit better. So we're going to move these pieces of glass around. I'll grab some more. I have a blue piece. Doesn't matter what color. I'm just using it to hold it down. Let's see. Let's see if that'll work. Let's get a smaller piece. And we'll move these around as we apply the frit, but this will kind of help hold the edges that are popping up on the stencil down while we apply the frit. Hopefully we won't disturb the pattern too much. If we do, we'll just wipe it off and try again. So let's go ahead and start applying our frit. Just start filling in the pattern. I may come back and fill in some thin spots, but we'll just get a good coating to start with. And this will take a few minutes, so. And nothing's wasted. If we apply this and pull the stencil off and we don't like the way the lines look, we can redo it. We can just brush it off back into the jar and try again. It's the first time I've used a stencil this large. So we'll see. And we'll move this glass pieces around and get the pieces that we can't get to in a second. So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit and fill in. I'll go back over it again entirely once we get most of the space filled in. You can tap it if you want to. I just kind of go back and forth with a brush or whatever you have in hand. If we can hold this down a little bit without disturbing it too much. Just keep dipping more of the powder as you use it up. We'll just fill in what we can and we'll come back and move these pieces of glass and get the areas that we missed that it's covering up. And we're going to want to get this rather thick because we want this to be pretty opaque without any black showing through. So I'll get this part down here pretty heavy, pretty thick. It's coming in nicely. We'll backtrack a little bit and thicken up some of these areas that we did the first time, kind of layering it with just another layer. And once we do that, we'll move these pieces of glass and we'll get the part at the bottom that we're not able to get yet. Once we get a pretty hefty layer of powder on here to the point where I can't see any black showing through. Sometimes I can't tell. I have to go back and look at it real closely to see if it's, like I say, ideally I would have had a larger sifter to do this with. I think it would apply it a little bit more evenly. I'll pick up one of those and we'll possibly try this again with this or another pattern to see how better the larger sifter will do. But this will still work. Just looking for any areas that look kind of thin where the glass underneath is showing through. Don't know how this is going to work, but we'll find out. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to just put my finger on the stencil so it doesn't shift when I move these pieces of glass. I think I'll put it here just to kind of hold this part of the stencil down. Okay, we'll apply some more powder in the areas that are missing. As you can see, what we have so far, we have this little area left to go. Okay, let's move this piece of glass. We're going to hold the stencil down so it doesn't shift. Grab this piece and just shift it down a little bit. And fill in this little area here. And it's okay if it's not perfect. With stencils, you're going to have some bleed over no matter what you do, even when you're painting with stencils. I think these stencils are designed for painting, not for glass work, so I'm trying to use them for a purpose that they weren't originally intended, but I think we can make it work and still get something nice out of it. I'm still going backtracking and looking for thin areas that I may have missed. Just trying to get a nice build up. Kind of hit this a little bit. Let's slide that over just a touch. I'm going to brush this a tad just to make it flat because I hit it with a piece of glass. It'll be okay though. There you go, just filled it right in. So I think that looks pretty good. I'll go back one more time and look for any thin areas, especially on the tips. Sometimes those are hard to get to. Move around the outer edge and get any tips that we may have missed. And then I'll work my way in the interior. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of fill it in the best you can. You're going to have some bleed over. You can take a brush later and brush those. If it's a severe area where it went underneath the piece of stencil that's sticking up, you can brush those to the side if it's a major, if it's not to your liking. So we'll take this off and see how it turned out. So I'm going to put my finger on the stencil so it doesn't slide any, and just lift these pieces of glass that I had holding it down. Just set those to the side. Before I moved that last piece, there was a little corner of the glass that was covering up this stencil. I'm going to kind of smooth it out a little bit. There you go, just a little bit. I'm going to put my finger on it again and lift this off. I want to take a final look around and see if there's any other areas that I think need to be filled in a little bit. I see a couple. Like I say, I wish this stencil was thicker so I can build up the powder a little bit more. But I think it'll still work. This is an experiment, as I said. A lot of my videos are doing it for the first time type of an experiment to see how things are going to turn out. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So we'll give it a shot and see what comes out. I'll peruse this a little bit and see if there's any other areas that I'm missing that might need some work. Because once I pull the stencil off, it'll be difficult to apply any more powder to this. So you want to get it all you think you need before you remove the stencil. The only area I'm worried about with this stencil is this middle part, this heart, that's kind of not tied to any other part of the stencil structure-wise. So I'm thinking it's going to flop down a little bit, and I'm hoping that the powder doesn't like fly off of it and land in the middle. Even if it does, I think we can take a brush and brush it to the side and kind of recreate the pattern that was there. I got a little bit of piece here that's kind of sticking up, so I'm just patting it down. It's going to melt anyway, so it'll smooth itself out naturally. Taking another quick look to see if there's any thin areas that I might want to touch up. So now we're going to attempt to remove the stencil. I'm going to put my finger on this portion here and just go on the other side with my left hand and just lift up slowly. And then I'm going to come back and get this side and just try to go straight up with it, hoping that that heart doesn't fall down and drop any powder out of it. Dropped a touch, but not a whole lot. You can see a little bit there. I'm gonna take one of my craft brushes and just come in there and kind of just brush it to the side. Not sure how this is going to do because it's white on black. We'll show smears, if you will. But I think it'll melt into it okay. We'll come along here and clean up some of these areas. Just kind of smooth it. And then when we get to the edge, we'll just kind of, like a broom, we'll just brush them off to the side. It's okay if they end up staying on the glass and melting into it. It's just, will add to the effect, I think. There's a little bit there that came off. I'm going to get a tissue or a paper towel. And just wrap it around my finger. Because what it'll do is it'll clean off the glass at the same time. I'm going to try to, this larger area, just smooth this out. Just by pushing the powder over to the edge. I'll get a clean spot. Using it as a brush. Like I said, I've not done this before, so just trying to experiment with it. See what comes out. We've got some frit here. I'll lift it up so you can see. Let me slide it to the edge so I get my finger underneath it and lift it. You can see some frit here that kind of spilled over underneath the stencil. Like I said, I think it'll be okay. We'll clean it up a little bit more. Let me lay this down softly so it doesn't like bump. And you can use your hand to get some of it all too. I'll try not to get any fingerprints on the glass. Any to spill over, I just kind of brush it off. Little fine areas I can get with a small brush. I think some of these small pieces will melt to the point where you won't even notice them. Kind of looks like snow, if you will. Don't know what effect I'm really going for other than I thought the white was striking against the darker glass. So we'll see how it turns out. We'll get this in the kiln onto the mold and slump it and fuse it all in one shot and see how it turns out. Okay, we have the tree plate out of the kiln now. I want to show it to you. You'll notice some thin areas like in here and here. I think it's okay. I don't think I'll refire it because I think it would just make it worse than it is. But it's okay. It's good for a first try. Probably would have went a little more thicker on the powdered frit. It'd been nicer to have a thicker, deeper stencil to where I could pile up the frit a little bit taller. That way it wouldn't thin down as much when it fired and melted into itself. But nevertheless, it turned out okay. It looks good. It's structurally sound. I'll show you the shape of it. It's just a kind of a curve on both sides. In the back, I really want to show you. I was telling you this mold did really nicely. It was a wood pattern. Let's see if I can angle it so you can see it. Relief of the wood. It looks really nice. Has a nice texture to it. It feels really, really nice. So yeah, I wasn't sure how this mold was going to do, but it turned out really well, I thought, as far as the slumping part of it. I'll put a link in the description if this mold's still available from where I got it, but and anything else related to this video. But there you go.